Welcome. Today we are taking an architectural shortcut right into the heart of Nepal's cultural history.
We are. We're heading to Patan City, which you might also know as Lalitpur. It's just a quick 30-minute drive south from the bustle of Kathmandu's city center.
And our focus for this exploration is Patan Durbar Square. It's one of the three magnificent ancient royal squares in the Kathmandu Valley.
That's right. And our mission really is to guide you through its incredible history, its unique architecture, and just the sheer volume of cultural treasures that are packed into this one location.
And for this, we're drawing on the really detailed insights and, well, the deep knowledge of Nepal guidebook author David Ways.
We want to unpack what makes Patan so important, especially for those of you who appreciate meticulous craftsmanship and unique historical stories.
Okay, so the sources highlight something of a paradox right from the start. Patan Durbar Square is, factually, the smallest of the three major squares.
It is. Smaller than both Kathmandu and Bhaktapur.
And yet, it's very frequently called the most beautiful by both experts and travelers.
That phrase, most beautiful, is obviously subjective, but it really speaks to the quality and, I think, the density of the art here.
So how does it compare exactly?
Well, if you look at the three, Bhaktapur feels grand and spacious, very cohesive. Kathmandu is, of course, beautiful, but it's still in a state of complex recovery from the 2015 earthquake.
And Patan.
Patan is different. It's described as being crammed with exquisite temples. It's not a big open space. It's an intensely concentrated dose of Newari culture, almost designed for you to discover it up close.
I wonder, though, given the historical weight of Kathmandu Durbar Square as the political heart, with the living goddess's house and so on, is calling Patan the most beautiful a bit generous, or is the architecture genuinely superior?
That's a fair point.
Yeah.
And it gets to the core of the assessment. The argument for Patan often rests on two things: concentration and consistency.
Okay.
Because it's smaller, the density of these high-quality monuments just feels overwhelming, but in the best possible way.
Yeah.
And more importantly, while Kathmandu styles are diverse, Patan has this really focused, consistent execution of Newari artistry, especially in its metalwork and stone carving, which we'll get into.
And the restoration efforts have been more successful there.
Notably successful, yes, and very sympathetic to the original structures. So the overall experience for you as a visitor today just feels more complete, more polished than its neighbors.
That makes a lot of sense. And geographically, it's perfectly positioned, isn't it?
Absolutely. The square is right in the center of the larger heritage zone of Patan City. So it's an ideal base, not just for a quick visit, but for a longer stay if you're exploring the whole city.
Okay, so before we get into the history, let's talk about the culture here. What defines the style of these monuments?
The first thing is this profound cultural synthesis. Patan is an ancient Newari city, and the square is a living example of that culture's ability to just blend belief systems.
So it's not just one thing.
Not at all. The collection is described as a tantric mix of Hindu, Buddhist, and newer temples. It's a demonstration of how these spiritual paths, which are often seen as distinct elsewhere, just flourish together.
So you'll see a Vishnu representation right next to a Buddha.
Exactly. Sometimes even sharing the same structure or motifs, with Newari deities sort of overseeing the whole thing. It's fascinating.
And as we discuss these amazing structures, we have to talk about the 2015 earthquake. I think a lot of visitors assume the worst based on the media reports from that time.
Yes, and that assumption really needs to be clarified. It's crucial to state this clearly. Patan Durbar Square was not flattened by the earthquake.
It wasn't devastated.
No, it certainly sustained damage. Two major temples did collapse and parts of the palace were badly affected. But Patan stands out because it's become one of the most successfully and beautifully restored areas in all of Nepal.
That's a really important distinction for anyone planning a visit now, in 2024 or 2025. The experience is largely intact.
Exactly. The main royal complex, the famous Tusha Hiti stepwell, that whole row of temples, including the incredible Krishna Mandir, they all survived largely in place. The visible architecture is still breathtaking.
Okay, let's get into the history then, because the concentration of genius here was fueled by a really unusual dynamic. We need to go back way before the Mallas, right?
We do. Scholars trace the earliest beginnings of the square to just after the Lichavi era ended, around 879 CE.
And the Lichavis were a major early dynasty known for their cultural output.
Extremely important, yes. The period after them with the Thakuri kings was a bit more decentralized. And while there's not a lot of physical evidence from that specific time, the belief is that some kind of royal palace or administrative center was already on this spot.
So it was always a seat of power. The sources also mention the Pradhana caste being associated with the square even before the Mallas. What does that tell us?
It suggests the Mallas weren't building from scratch. They were enhancing and building on an existing power structure. But the square is real. Explosion into the masterpiece we see today, that happened much later, around the 1600s, right in the Malla era.
And this is where the story gets really interesting. It's driven by this intense competition, but not the usual kind between kingdoms.
This is the most fascinating part of the story for the whole valley, really. We're talking about King Siddhartha Malla of Patan, who is credited with starting what was essentially a cultural arms race.
A cultural arms race. I love that description. How did that play out between the three Malla kingdoms?
Well, instead of pouring all the resources into military conflict, which they could have, the Malla kings of Kathmandu and Bhaktapur basically took up the challenge from Patan. The goal was to outdo each other with art, not armies.
So they were competing to see who could build the most beautiful, most elaborate capital city.
Exactly. Who had the most spiritually significant temples, the most richly decorated palace. It's such a rare thing in history, isn't it? Competition driving creation, not destruction.
It really is. The entire Kathmandu Valley is a legacy of this sort of sibling rivalry channeled into architecture.
Precisely. And it meant that the royal treasuries, instead of funding bigger armies, were dedicated to importing the best artisans, the finest timber, the most skilled metalworkers. Prestige was measured by the height of your pagoda roof or the intricacy of your window carvings.
Can you give a specific example of what they were comparing? What was the benchmark for this rivalry?
One clear thing was the use of materials. In Patan, you see this extensive use of carved dark wood, almost like lace, set against the brick. But then a king decides to build something completely different, like the Krishna Mandir in Patan.
The one built in the Indian style.
Exactly, the northern Indian Shikara style. In the middle of all these Nuwari pagodas, that was a massive, highly visible statement. It was architectural one-upmanship. It was like saying, look what we can do. We can master foreign styles better than anyone.
A remarkable legacy. And that golden era of competition ended, didn't it?
It did. By the late 18th century, the Shah dynasty rose, overthrew the Mallas, and unified the three kingdoms into the single country we know today. That shift ended the localized artistic rivalry, but the heritage remained.
All right, let's switch from history to practicalities. For a traveler today, what are the logistics for getting into Patan Durbar Square?
The entry fee is the main thing. For foreign tourists, it's currently 1,000 rupees, which is about $10 US.
And critically, that fee doesn't just get you into the square itself.
No, and this is important. It also includes entrance to the superb Patan Museum, which is housed inside the palace complex.
1,000 rupees can feel like a lot for a single site. Why do the sources insist it's worth it?
It's only worth it if you explore it thoroughly. If you just walk through and take a few photos, you'll feel shortchanged. The real value is in slowing down, going to the museum, exploring the inner courtyards.
And there's an essential tip about return visits.
The most essential tip. Once you've paid that initial fee, you can get free return visits. You just have to register at the ticket office with your passport and get them to stamp a return ticket.
That's invaluable, really.
It is. Patan is a place you want to see at different times of day. Seeing the light on the gilded windows at dawn or watching the rituals in the evening, that turns the single fee into a multi-day pass. It encourages a much deeper connection.
And visitors should be prepared for the fact that reconstruction is still very much ongoing.
That's right. You will definitely see scaffolding, fenced-off areas, piles of timber and stone, especially around the two collapsed temples. But the source material is adamant. Do not let that discourage you.
Why not? Why should the reconstruction be a point of interest?
Because this is where you get a unique, unparalleled view of traditional craftsmanship in action. You're not seeing cranes and concrete. You're seeing skilled stonemasons and carpenters using traditional Nuwari tools and techniques.
Can you give an example of what to look for?
Look for the timber work. They're mostly using salwood, which is traditional, dense, and durable. They aren't using nails. They're using these intricate mortise and tenon joints that have held these buildings together for centuries.
So you might see them carving the replacements for the roof struts.
You often can. The tundle, those famous, highly detailed wooden struts, they'll be working on them right there on the ground, recreating these incredible deity figures before they're installed. It's a living museum of heritage skills.
It completely shifts your perspective. You're not just seeing an old building, you're watching 17th century methods being revived.
It's a powerful testament to the community's commitment to its own identity.
Okay, let's move into the square itself and start our walk. Where's the best place to begin?
The ideal place is the southern end, near the ticket office. From there, you just walk north, covering the main temples on the western side, the long row facing the palace, before you cross over.
And how long should you plan for?
If you're focused, you can see the highlights in maybe 1 or 2 hours. But if you really want to study the carvings, I'd allow 3 or 4.
We'll start with the temples on the left-hand side, moving north. The first one you see is the Chiasen Dwal.
And it's a spectacular introduction. It's a really attractive octagonal temple, built entirely of solid granite. That material choice immediately sets it apart from the more common brick and timber.
Built by King Siddhi Narasimha, wasn't it?
Yes, between 1637 and 1647, he was clearly emphasizing strength and durability. The octagonal form is highly unusual, and you could look for the 2 massive stone lion guardians at the base of the platform.
Just beyond that, there's the huge Telaju bell.
A massive cast iron bell, erected later, around 1736. It's very imposing. The folklore says it was rung to terrify enemies.
But its real function was more practical.
Much more practical, yes. It was for communication, signaling invaders, making city announcements, calling citizens for royal decrees. Its size alone gives it this incredible symbolic power, though.
Okay, continuing north, we come to the first really poignant reminder of the 2015 earthquake, the site of the Hari Shankar Temple.
This is where you really pause. The temple, built in 1706, was dedicated to a fusion of Shiva and Vishnu. It was completely lost.
But something remains.
The 2 heavy, magnificent stone elephant guardians. They stood watch for centuries, and they're still standing there today, waiting for the temple they guarded to be fully rebuilt. It's a very powerful image of continuity.
The second major structure lost in the same event was the Jagan Narayan Temple.
Yes, and that was historically significant because it was the oldest structure in the square, dating back to 1566.
And it was used for more than just religious purposes.
That's right. It was often used as a platform for important political speeches. So losing both of those temples meant losing 2 very distinct historical layers of the square.
We now arrive at what is really the centerpiece of this entire row, the magnificent Krishna Mandir.
It's extraordinary. And it perfectly embodies that Malla rivalry. Completed in 1637, it took only 6.5 years to build, which is just phenomenal for this kind of work.
And it's built almost entirely of carved stone, which is unusual here.
Very unusual. And that choice of material and its rapid completion was a direct challenge to the other kingdoms. But the real deviation is its architectural style.
The Indian Shikara style.
Exactly. A Shikara temple has that tall, curved, conical tower, symbolizing the peak of Mount Meru. To build one of those in the heart of a Newari pagoda city was, as we said, the ultimate architectural flex by King Siddhi Malla.
And the detail on the stonework.
Breathtaking. The walls are covered in these intricately carved narrative panels, illustrating scenes from the Hindu epics, the Mahabharata, and the Ramayana. You can spend hours just tracing the stories in the stone.
And opposite the temple, there's a statue of Garuda.
Yes, the beautiful Garuda, mounted on a high column. Garuda is the celestial vehicle of Lord Vishnu. And since Krishna is an incarnation of Vishnu, having Garuda face the temple completes that whole devotional narrative. It creates a very powerful focal point.
Next up is the Vishwanath Temple, dedicated to Shiva.
This temple, built between 1676 and 1678, has an origin story that's linked to international conflict.
Oh.
King Siddhi Narasimha built it shortly after he witnessed the destruction of the original Vishwanath temple in Benares, India. So building this one in Patan was a deliberate act of cultural and religious preservation.
So it's a statement of resilience. What are its defining features?
It's a classic, stunning Newari pagoda, and it's guarded by 2 imposing stone riders on massive elephants at the entrance. It adds this layer of protective grandeur. The metalwork on the doors is also exceptional.
And after that, we come to the Bhimsen Mandir Temple.
Right, built in 1680. And this one represents a slight pause in that valley-wide rivalry. It was built during a rare period of peace among the 3 kingdoms.
And its dedication is also interesting.
It is. It's dedicated to Bhimsen, who, in the Newari tradition, is revered as the god of traders and commerce.
A reminder that these squares were also economic hubs.
Absolutely. Patan was a major center for trade and craft. And you should look for the large fire pit opposite the temple. It's still used for rituals specific to the trading community, which really cements the temple's role in the city's economic life.
Okay, we finished the temple row. Now we cross the square to the palace complex and the chowks. A chowk is a courtyard, right?
Exactly, a courtyard or quadrangle. But before you even enter the palace, the first significant feature you see is the Manga Hiti.
Which is one of the ancient water systems.
Yes, a Hiti is a sunken water source, often with incredible stone carvings. And the Manga Hiti is still functional today, which is remarkable. These water systems were vital infrastructure for a dense city like Patan.
To get into the palace and the museum, we go through a very ornate doorway.
That's the main entrance. It leads you first into the Keshab Narayan Chowk, which houses the Patan Museum, a definite must-see. And beyond that are the more sacred central inner courtyards.
Let's talk about Mul Chowk, which is described as the heart of Durbar Square.
Mul Chowk, built in 1666, was the primary royal courtyard. It was damaged in the earthquake, but the great news is that its restoration is now nearly complete.
And it's being used by artisans now.
In a wonderfully fitting way, yes. They're actively working on rebuilding parts of the palace and temples right there in the courtyard they're destined for. It's another one of those living history moments for visitors.
What are the key features to look for inside?
We'll look straight ahead for the beautifully gilded figures of Ganga and Jamuna, the river goddesses. They symbolize purity and life. There's also a central copper shrine. It's a space that tells a story of both former royal grandeur and modern, meticulous restoration.
Moving deeper, we get to Sundari Chowk.
And Sundari Chowk is maybe the most significant of the courtyards because it contains what is arguably the centerpiece attraction of the entire square, the magnificent Tusha Hiti stepwell.
We should spend a moment on the Tusha Hiti. What was its purpose?
It was constructed in 1647 by King Sitinarasim Malla, not for public water, but specifically for ritual ablutions. It was a royal ceremonial bathing space for the king and the deities.
And the carvings are phenomenal, I understand.
They are. The ornamentation is just out of this world. You have countless carvings of Hindu deities, the Naga serpents symbolizing water protector figures. The stonework on the spouts and balustrades is impossibly detailed. It's the Malla era at its absolute artistic peak.
And finally, at the rear of Sundari Chowk is the Bandar Kal tank.
Yes, built in 1667. And this one contrasts with the Tusha Hiti. This pond was purely utilitarian. It was the main water supply for the Durbar Square. It really brings the practical side of maintaining an ancient city into focus.
So we've gone through the main square in quite some detail, but the sources give a really critical piece of advice. The square is only the beginning.
That is the ultimate takeaway. The main point to stress is that there is so much more to explore and discover outside Patan's Durbar Square than inside it. The entire city is a walkable, living heritage zone.
So the visitor who just pays the fee spends 45 minutes inside the square and leaves has missed most of it.
Completely. The square is the magnificent anchor, but the surrounding streets are full of smaller, often free-to-visit Buddhist courtyards or bahals and temples. Places like the Golden Temple, Pimbaha, Ukubahal, they offer a much more peaceful immersion into local life.
Which brings us to a crucial tip about guided tours.
The sources offer a strong caution here. Expensive, pre-booked tours often rush you through the main sites, limiting themselves to just the square and maybe the Golden Temple.
So independent exploration is better.
Overwhelmingly better. It lets you set your own pace, spend an hour on the carvings of the Krishna Mandir if you want. But more importantly, it lets you wander off the main path and discover the hidden courtyards that many guides just rush past.
That sounds like a much richer experience. Now, for those who want to base themselves in Patan, let's talk about accommodation. Is it a good place to stay?
It's an excellent place for a longer stay. It's a deeper, quieter immersion into Newari culture than, say, the chaos of central Kathmandu. And there's a good range of lodging.
Starting at the higher end.
For a high-end experience, there's the Summit Hotel. It's well-established, known for its beautiful garden. But a keynote, it's not within walking distance of the square. You'll need a taxi. Prices start around $145 US.
And for the mid-range, which is often the sweet spot?
A few great options. Hotel Clarion Patan is reliable and well-serviced, starting around $45. For something really atmospheric, there's traditional Home Swotha, which has rooms in the traditional Newari style, maybe $55 and up.
And another one with more amenities.
That would be Hotel Goodwill. It has a pool, sauna, things like that. It's known for being very peaceful and offers great value, sometimes starting around $30.
And finally, for the budget traveler.
Durbar Guest House is one of the few remaining budget options right there. The rooms are simple and clean, but the main draw is the location and the price, starting at around $8. Perfect if you're prioritizing experience over luxury.
So what does this all mean? Patan Durbar Square is more than just a collection of buildings. It's a concentrated, stunning glimpse into this Nuwari cultural blend. Hindu and Buddhist traditions, all preserved through centuries of artistic rivalry.
And that artistic rivalry is the really profound question the site poses. Think about it. King Siddhartha Malla and his rivals. They made a conscious choice to channel their wealth and energy into creating lasting beauty.
Their rivalry was channeled into stonework and timber, not battlefields.
Exactly. We often focus on how societies achieve peace, but Patan shows us how rivalry itself can be harnessed to serve creation.
It makes you wonder what kind of legacies would be forged today if modern competition was redirected into monumental, cultural, or artistic output. The resultant 17th century Patan is certainly an enduring, breathtaking success.
An incredible legacy born of rivalry, absolutely.
We have covered the square's main monuments today, but as we stressed, Patan offers so much more. We promise you a future program dedicated to exploring those other vital areas of Patan City, the hidden bahals, the Golden Temple, and the quiet courtyards that really complete the experience.
And for anyone planning a visit, or who just wants to explore this further, we highly recommend the source material from Nepal guidebook author David Ways.
You can find his resources at the Longest Way Home Nepal travel website. His premium guidebooks, the full Nepal guidebook, the dedicated Kathmandu Valley Heritage Walks, and the specific Patan guidebook are all 100% independent and offer the detailed maps and insight you need for successful independent exploration.
Thank you for joining us.
Until next time.